Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Ida Maybon of LightCycleAstrology.com. Today, we are taking a look at the themes surrounding the full moon in the sign of Aries coming up this Sunday, October the 9th. Before we get into it, please like, share, and subscribe, and leave your comments in the comment section below because it really helps the channel to grow, and I really appreciate that. All right, let's dive right in. We'll pull up the real-time clock that I have set for October the 9th. This is really going to come through right around maybe 5 or 6 p.m. if you're on the East Coast of the United States. But for me in Hawaii, it's more around 11 a.m. You can see that we have the moon culminating right around the middle of Aries here at degree 16. So if you have in your natal birth chart any planets around maybe between the degrees of 13 to 19, this could be a full moon that is really fortunate and impacts your chart in a bigger way. One thing you notice right off the bat with this full moon is that opposing the moon is the sun, which is always the case for a full moon. But we're seeing the sun being co-joined by Venus, a benefic. We also see that the moon is co-present in Aries with Jupiter, the other benefic. In ancient astrology, benefic is just another way of saying that these are the planets that tend to represent the good things that happen to us in life. So it can be anything from having pleasurable times with friends or family, having some good fortune come through right now, maybe with some money or with an opportunity or something like that. The only shadow side about this particular full moon is that, you know, full moons a lot of times are packed with a lot of energy, especially one in the sign of Aries. And we may tend to overindulge on sweets or food or spending money at this time. But overall, this is really speaking to something fortunate that could happen or come through in your life right now because of these co-presence with the benefic planets. And it seems like it's going to be a really pleasant or enjoyable time. Now, one thing that I wanted to dive in with a little bit, just to get a sense of also what's happening, is you can see here there's another aspect happening at the same time between the Sun and Saturn. This Sun-Saturn trine is really interesting for one reason. Well, Saturn is still in its retrograde motion, but by the next new moon, which is happening just 2 weeks or so after the full moon, we're going to get an eclipse right at the very beginning of the sign of Scorpio here. Actually, let me just pull forward and you can see this. If I go forward by days, moving the chart ahead by a couple of weeks here, you can see the moon coming through and we are having that eclipse happening. Looks like by October the 25th, maybe the 20th, yeah, by about October the 25th, you can see that there is an eclipse. That's the new moon. Now look down here at Saturn. We already have Saturn no longer has that red notation that signifies it was going retrograde. So by this time, Saturn has already stationed and begins to turn direct right as the eclipse comes through, that new moon eclipse. So what does that mean? A new moon eclipse is going to signify a big, giant beginning that happens at that time. Because we have, I think, this is the way I'm reading it, because we have this big new beginning eclipse energy that is coming through in 2 weeks, and we also have Saturn stationing to turn towards a new direction, right? Saturn's going backwards, but by that time, it goes through the moment where it stops, and then it begins to go forward in a new direction. So you have two significations of beginnings happening. One thing that is interesting is it seems like we're meant to get some kind of general support. On this full moon, again, we have co-presence with benefic planets. Maybe there's some good fortune coming in, but we also have this trine, which is of the nature of Jupiter in ancient astrology. And that could also signify that there's some support between a direction that we're starting to feel like we want to go towards or shift our life towards, some image or ideal that we're starting to sense. And we may have the ability to really knuckle down and do some hard changes or some hard work. One thing that Aquarius is famed for is really seeing contradictions or living contradictions. One of the esoteric principles behind the themes of both the Sun and Saturn sort of talk about the Sun being kind of a unitary or singularity God-like spirit, right? The sun is the central spirit or the soul. And as such, if you think about it on a deep level, that central spirit or soul has to do with something being kind of single or one thing, right? Because it's the one soul. It's the one God, if you will. Saturn being in opposite position in the theme of Mundi, meaning that the sun belongs in Leo as a home temple for the sun, and Saturn is directly across in the sign of Aquarius where he belongs. So there is a dual opposite type of philosophical underpinning between the theme of what Saturn represents and the theme of what the sun represents. So if the theme of the sun represents something that is of a singular nature, of a divine center or unchanging truth, a principle and light and godhood, then Saturn is the fragmentation of duality within the material world or cosmos. So you cannot define light without darkness. You cannot have day without night. You cannot have, oftentimes in many species on the planet, I know there are some exceptions to this, but oftentimes it takes two different sexes to create some new life form. So you have the birds, you have the pollen, you have all these different dualities in life that is just built into the nature of existence down here in the material realm. But when you talk about the sun supersedes all of those things. The sun represents something that is divine, of one thing, of one God. So Saturn is the opposite to that. Saturn represents the multivalent or fractional way that the sun can be split up into all of these dualities. So the reason I'm going deep into this esoteric principle is because when you have some benefic or supportive energy coming from the singularity to the duality, it's as if what's happening is we're feeling this maybe sense or urge to go forward in a new direction, to turn a new season. We're on the verge of this new horizon, and Saturn might be able to really illuminate some opposite side of the coin that we never considered, a form of duality that all of a sudden is just illuminated. And it's like, oh my gosh, I've been looking at this thing, but the opposite of that is this. And maybe that could help me go in a new direction or take my life towards something positive at this time. There is some sense of that I get with this with this full moon that is leading us towards the next new moon, which is the eclipse in Scorpio. So for me, there is this sense that we're not just going to run into like a brick wall at full speed and then change. Oftentimes in astrology, it seems like the planets are stepping us down gradually or stepping us up gradually. Have you ever had that experience where you think there's one more step at the top of a staircase, or you think there's another step at the bottom of the staircase, and you end up with your hips in your chest because, it's this sudden jarring boom that you come to thinking that there's something else? For me, it seems like aspects tend to lead or cascade into the next aspect. So I think that this is a preluding aspect that is giving us some really positive and benefic ability to sort of take a gradual incremental, step up or step towards a new turning or pivot with our lives at this time, heading us into a new season. So this is really, really good. In my opinion, this sets up a 2-week period from now where it might be hard. We might be taking on new duties as represented by Saturn, but there is also a shift, and it's going to be something that potentially works out for the better in the long run. So that's something that is a really big signature to this full moon. Let me go back now to October the 9th. There are also a couple of other things happening at the same time. We do still see, let's see here. Let me go to my notes here. Mercury trine Pluto. That's another thing that's happening. Mercury is also going through quite a change right now that is really interesting. So check this out. We've got Mercury here just at the last degrees of Virgo. Now, Mercury is at home in the sign of Virgo, and Mercury is also in exaltation status in this sign, meaning that Whatever Mercury represents in terms of markets or finance or the back and forth of sports or the back and forth of our ideas, Mercury as a god of exchange and movement and thinking and intellectual ideas, or the movement of travel, or all of this quick movement that Mercury represents. It's really speeding up right now, because not only is it now going forward, having recently changed from its retrograde motion, it is also again exalted, meaning it is lifted up to a great high status in dignity in the sign of Virgo, which is fascinating. Because let's just take a look real quick at the speed change that Mercury does. I went through and I did a little bit of some nerdy stuff with Mercury here. From October the 2nd to October 3rd, Mercury had moved 9 arc minutes through the zodiac. So that was October the 3rd was the day that Mercury stationed to turn direct again. And it only moved 9 arc minutes within the zodiac. So that's not very much. But from the 3rd to the 4th, Mercury then moves a whole whopping 19 arc minutes. On the 5th, Mercury moves 28. By the 6th, Mercury moves 38. By the 7th, Mercury moves 47. By the 8th, Mercury moves 54 arc minutes. By the 9th, on the full moon, Mercury has moved 62 minutes. So you can see Mercury is increasing its speed. It's turning that corner, and it's shooting out of that corner, out of retrograde, just as fast as it can. It's just squealing the tires, and it's coming out, and it's basically ramping up to full Mercury speed as it changes directions and comes out of the Mercury retrograde here. By the 10th, Mercury goes 69 arc minutes forward. By the 11th, 74. On the 12th, 79. On the 13th, 84. On the 14th, 87. On the 15th, 91. On the 16th, 93. On the 17th, 96. On the 18th, 97 arc minutes. And by the 19th, 20th, 21, 21st, we're pretty much at full speed for Mercury, right around hovering about 99 or 100, 101 arc minutes. So that's about a degree and 4/5 or something. It's not quite it's a little more than a degree and a half a day, but just by a little bit here. So in other words, right now, this is a very powerful Mercury moment, because Mercury is, let's go through the checklist, in its own temple of Virgo. Mercury is exalted in its most celebrated and lifted up or important and powerful signatory place in Virgo. And it is no longer going retrograde. It is shooting out of the corner as fast as it can go, picking up speed rapidly. So if you've noticed in the last couple of days that there have been a lot of messages coming through, that there has been a lot of communications coming through, that there's been a lot of activity where you're just juggling a lot of things or planning a lot of things, there could be something happening with money that seems to be ramping up right now. If you've noticed just a general busyness in your life right now, I think that could, because Mercury is really just hauling balls right now, coming out of the corner of retrograde. So that is really interesting. Now, so we're talking about Mercury is basically going about half as fast as it normally does on the full moon. So this could also be a full moon where not only are we having a good time, we're being able to maybe focus on maybe turning towards a new direction that has some connection with maybe being responsible or taking on new duties or seeing some new image, the other side of a coin that could help our lives out. But we're also having this incredible mental acuity. We're socializing, we're talking to people, messages are coming through. It's a really, really good sign for Mercury during this full moon as well. We also have, look at this, we have a trine that Mercury forms to Pluto here also on the full moon. What could a trine between Pluto represent? Well, generally speaking, I've got a couple of themes for this. One theme could be getting good results, speaking to those in power, right? We've got Mercury maybe going out on a limb, maybe you have to go up to a boss and say, hey, I have this idea. I think we should try this. And maybe it seems like there's a little bit of intimidation because your boss is maybe very powerful, represented maybe by Pluto, a powerful figure. But because it's a trine aspect, something works out. Something is like the boss goes, oh, I really like that idea. Something like that. Another theme for this could be fortuitously having information fall into your lap that gives you the upper hand. This might be where it's all of a sudden like you discover something and it's like, wow, this information is really powerful and somehow that benefits you. Again, Mercury being the information, Pluto being something that's kind of powerful or leading to power, and the trine being something that benefits you because it's of the nature of Jupiter. We could also have a theme. Theme 3 could be like discovery through having great attention to detail. That seems pretty obvious, But the reason I say discovery specifically is because Pluto, along with the other outer planets that were discovered in the modern time, they have a general signification, a general association with just discovery in and of itself because they were discovered, right? So there could be something mercurial that is discovered, or maybe there's some hidden money that you didn't know you had underneath your couch or something like this, or some kind of discovery that is fortunate. We could have the ability to communicate powerfully. That's pretty easy to understand, but this is like you really need to be very articulate and have your message hit the bullseye type of a theme here. And theme 5 is maybe having profound scientific methodology. This could be a moment, both planets have this scientific association with them. It was astronomers who put a lot of scientific know-how and skill into discovering Pluto. So there was this scientific connection with Pluto. And of course, Mercury in ancient astrology represented math and science and things like that. So this could be where you're just able to just be like a scientist for the day and really come up with some interesting innovations, perhaps. So that is also coming through this full moon here. Lastly, let's just talk about a little bit what the moon is like in the sign of Aries when it's full. Now, this is, a full moon generally represents some culmination, some height of energy, something that is ripe and ready to blossom. Oftentimes, it can have this high energy where there's a little bit of a crazy vibe out there. In the sign of Mars, this is a really energetic full moon. So one theme that I am pairing with this full moon is simply that we're talking maybe potentially about danger and reward. This could be a time where you do something risky with your body. So you want to be a little bit careful of doing risky things because even though we've got this energy being surrounded by the benefics, this is a time maybe where you'll go out on a limb, rescue the cat from the tree or do something crazy at a party, maybe drive too fast, especially since Mars is still in the sign of Gemini. But be a little bit careful of that. This could be a moment where you want to take a risk with your body. Theme number 2 is the culmination of something that passes away now that gives the way for a new beginning. And that's simply because we're talking about the full moon as a culminative energy, and we have it happening in a sign that often is, very associated with the cardinal turning of a season, and it's a springtime season. So this could be a sense in the air that, again, there's something about on the verge of shifting towards something new. So I'm really feeling like, in general, that's the whole theme with this new moon. It's as if the moment is speaking to, yes, there are a lot of good things happening right now. There's some fortunate things that are coming through, but it's also getting a real feeling like we're just on the verge of a pretty big shift towards something else, but we're not going to get dropped down again. We're going to step our way down as we go, or step our way up, whatever the case may be. But again, because we're having the full moon in a sign that is a cardinal beginning sign, I really feel like the theme is being echoed here with that one. Theme number 3 would be war and birth. This is a little bit like theme number 2, where there might be a culmination that is happening simultaneous alongside an energy that is speaking towards, starting something new. War and birth, this is a sign of war and birth. So watch for themes that surround maybe having to fight for something that fight for a position that allows you to go in a direction that you want to, or fight for something that you need to have. This is the energy here in Aries where there could be a moment of conflict within the family, conflict within a marriage, conflict within a group of people, or friends or something like that, maybe sisters. There could definitely be this sense of like, I need to establish my ground, hold my boundaries. I'm going to do that. I might do it with some grace and tact. I might do it with some ingenious Saturn, Aquarius, contradictory, like mental gymnastic type of thing. But nonetheless, this could be a moment where the energy hits you and you really feel like, hey, I have to announce, declare, and move towards this change that I feel like is inevitable coming up on the future horizon here. And it may be a time where you have to, ram some heads to, pave the way towards that new change that you're heading towards. So that is also something that could be a potential here for this full moon in Aries, I think, as well. Now, one final thing is that we also have to remember, let's just pull in Venus as an interesting signification all on her own here to the moon. A couple of themes I have for that is we have classic beauty and young lust. So Venus in Libra is more that classic exalted Saturn location. So we're talking about beauty that has some establishment to it, maybe a classic or old beauty, like a classic car or something like that. And then we have the moon can represent that, maybe that young ambition or lust, that something that is really passionate and beautiful and energetic. And so there could be this theme of where these two are opposing each other. You have a romantic interlude that is potentially with somebody that is maybe older and somebody that is younger, something like that. Or maybe it's like there is a romantic moment, a sexy time, if you will, that is both loving and classically connected, and also at the same time, represents some, fun bedroom acrobatics or something to that effect. But there's this sort of duality between the classic beauty and the young hotness that is happening by the moon. Okay, theme number 2. Now, this is a strange theme. I'll give you that. This theme is, I'm calling it sex and menstrual blood. I'm just throwing this in here as kind of an aside, but, we have Venus, a planet that represents sex. We have the moon that represents women. We have the moon in a sign that has a connection to blood. So make of that what you will. I don't know. That could be an everyday thing, all over the world for people, but maybe there's a spike in it somehow or another right now. I don't know. But there's something interesting about that one, I think. Okay, and theme 3, refined tastes versus impulsive, rash, or intemperate behavior. We've kind of already covered that a little bit. And theme 4 could be indulgent spending or coveting. So that is more the shadowy side. So just watch out for maybe going a little bit too far with the spending or coveting something that you want too much. That could be definitely a theme that creeps in and it kind of overpowers and grabs us at this time. So that is what I have for the full moon in the sign of Aries. Thanks so much for watching, everybody, and I'll be back real soon. I want to dive into the Mars square Neptune aspect that I didn't cover today. That is going to be quite a long aspect that we experience over the next month and a half or so. So that's going to be the next video to look forward to. But please share, like, and subscribe, and leave your comments in the comment section below. And again, thanks for watching, everybody. I'll be back soon. Hope you have a good full moon and take care. Bye.